Hey everyone, it's Tony from the Handlebar Workshops, and today we're in the garage workshop. I built this. It's a cabinet for garbage cans using only 6 tools. People tend to think that building furniture you need all the expensive equipment with the table saws and band saws and whatnot. You don't. I used the tape measure to make everything the correct size. Then using the speed square and the circular saw, I was able to cut everything. Using the drill and the pocket hole jig, I was able to connect everything together. And finally, using the random orbital sander, I was able to finish it all off. And then after putting on a good looking and durable finish, I was able to put this in my kitchen, and it works wonderfully. Using just a regular tape measure, I got some pretty accurate measurements of the length, the width, and the height of the 2 garbage cans pushed together. Using those measurements, I came up with a more detailed drawing of what I wanted to build. I opened up the measurements a little bit so that the garbage cans would have some room to move around in there, so we weren't fighting to put them together and fit them in there tight. So now I can start cutting up the wood into the sizes indicated on that drawing I made. Now I need all the ends of the 1x to meet up nicely with the edges of the other 1x's. And I don't trust what came from the mill. So I'm going to cut that off, square everything up using a speed square. This one's a metal one, but you can use one of the plastic ones from Harbor Freight or one of the other home stores. And I'm just going to use a circular saw, and I'm going to use the square as a fence to run my saw across. Now if you have a chop saw, you can do this on the chop saw. This is a 1x2. According to my drawing, I need 4 of these 15.5 inches long. So I take the tape measure, I put a little mark right at 15.5 inches, use the speed square, move it up to my pencil, and mark the line across. Again, using the speed square, I can use this to line up my cut so that I'm cutting just to the waist side of the line. I just need to do that 3 more times. Now I have 4 1x2s, all about the same height. And now I got to cut up the 1x3s. It's essentially the same procedure over and over again. I'll come back to you when I'm done with all that. So now we've got everything cut out. We've got our uprights here, everything that's up and down, and everything that's side to side, the top and bottoms here. Now the reason we went with the 1x2s and the 1x3s for the upright is when you put 2 of them together like this, we're going to be making an L shape at the corners. It's almost as big as a 1x3 by itself. So that way, from when you're looking at it from this direction, it looks almost like this, and it just looks more aesthetically pleasing. I'm going to be using a Craig pocket hole jig. If you don't have a pocket hole jig, you can just screw them or nail them together with some glue. These are 3/4 inch pieces here. So according to the instructions I have here, the pocket hole jig gets lined up with the edge of where you're going to put the pocket hole. Now we do run into a bit of a problem with joining the 1x2s on this side like this. As an experiment, I set the device up as per the instructions for 3/4 inch stock, which means it's supposed to be flush here. I drilled it in, and it's all the way over here. You can see there's a bit of a half circle there into the side, which I don't want. Using this little line across here, I set that even with the edge here, clamped it on and drilled it in, and it's much more regular looking, and there's no sign of it on the outside here. Now normally you would have a 1 1/4 inch screw for 3/4 inch pieces. This is just a 1 inch screw, which is normally used for 1/2 inch stock. But I found I can put that through and it won't come out the other side of the 3/4 inch piece that I'll be screwing into. So I'm just making a workshift table out of 3/4 inch plywood and sawhorses. I'm going to clamp the 1x2 and the jig to the table. All of the uprights get pocket holes in the bottom and the top because they're going to tie in to the top and bottom bars like this. So you screw in here, and then we'd screw in up here like that. The wider ones will get 2 pocket holes, the thinner ones will get 1 pocket hole. And now that we don't have to worry about being so thin here, we can do this just like the instructions say and set it up flush with the edge like that. One tip though, if you've been drilling a lot, don't touch that metal circle. It gets really hot. See how the pockets are overlapping like this? That's fine. We're going to have a screw head down here and a screw head over here. They will not interfere with one another. These pockets just make it easier to get a screwdriver or a bit on the drill in there easier. Just an aside, I do a lot of pocket holes in this project and I'm using the Kreg jig a lot. This video is not sponsored by Kreg or anyone else for that matter, but it's a tool that I've used a lot and I like it. Alright, so I went and put in pocket holes and everything. This is the side panels, the short sides. You'll notice that I put 2 pocket holes in the ends of each of these boards as well. These are going to be attached to 1x3s like this, while the other ones are attached by 1x3s like that. So we have to drill into here or screw into here with the pocket holes. Another thing we want to make sure we notice is that all of our pocket holes are pointing out in the same directions. You don't want to actually have this one like this and then screw everything together and then find out your pocket holes are going this way instead of this way. I'm going to screw the pieces together here and here, but I'm not going to put any glue because just in case these swivel a little bit, I don't want them drying in the glue that way. I want to be able to swivel them back into place when I put the plywood on top of this. Alright, to make sure this piece doesn't move, I'm going to clamp it down with a regular clamp. I'm going to use the speed square here to square everything up. I'm going to make sure that everything's flush on the outside here. I'm going to use the clamp that came with the Kreg system to clamp it to my work table. And then using the 1 1/4 inch screw that came with the kit as well as the driver bit that came with the kit, I'll drive the screw in. And now I'll do all 4 corners. Okay, that didn't work. So I made a mistake. When I went to cut these pockets, I had the collar set up for a 1/2 inch. That way I didn't blow all the way through these. But I forgot to reset it when I cut all the other ones. So we got to re-drill these holes. You just want to snug it up. Don't want to strip it out. So I clamped this piece to the work table. This is either the bottom or the top, depending which way it goes. It doesn't really matter. I marked a little mark on the center here, and I marked the center on this piece of wood here, so that way I can line those up. I've got another mark on the center down over here. I'm going to use some glue, just some Type-On 2, since it's going to be inside. Now we just do the same on the other side. I'm going to look at the wood and figure out which side looks best. That'll be my outside. This has a lot more black streaks in it than this side, so this will be my outside. So that goes down and the inside goes up. Now a little different here, we got to put glue on all 3 sides, on all 3 ends at once here. Got to use a little bit of strength here to push this out. And there's a bit of a gap in here, but that'll close up when I put the screws in. There, closed up. You can even see the glue squeeze out over here. Since I cut all these pieces with the circular saw and the speed square, some of them aren't quite the same size. So I put the shorter one here in the middle, because if I put it on one of the ends, it would teeter-totter a bit. But since it's in the middle, I should be able to bring these together, and it won't be nearly as noticeable that way. Alright, I got everything pretty much as tight as I can with the clamp. Now I'll put the screws in, and those should help draw it closer as well. I had to break out the impact driver in order to get this to work. Now we need to connect the short panels to the longer panels. We're going to do it like this, with the short panel down on the worktop and the big panel up on the side like this. So we're going to put them up together, then we'll clamp everything up and screw it in. We've got the short screws on the 1x2s and the long screws going in the 1x3s. Before we do any of that, we got to put glue on it. And here we finally have nice long grain going up against more long grain, so that should be a nice strong joint right there. Even without the pocket hole screws, but that'll make it even stronger. Now this is a short screw. It's going into the 1x2s. I always want to double check that you're flush on the bottom here where these two are going to meet. So far so good. So I'll put in another short screw. Oh, that moved on me. So you can see how there's a little step here. I can correct that with clamps. If I just clamp this here, I can bring that down. But this part still moves around a little bit. I can come in and clamp this one here. And since we put all the screws in along here, we don't need the clamps over here anymore. I'm going to cut some 1/4-inch plywood to go around the inside of that frame that we made. I had this cut up at the home store. You can see along the edge it's kind of got splinters and stuff over here, so I want to stay away from that side. I'm going to use the other 3 factory edges. And this side is the good side. I want to put this down so when the circular saw is cutting, the blade is coming up underneath and hitting the good side and coming out the bad side, because that's where the blowout's going to be. So we're going to need 3 measurements. Alright, one thing I want to do is I want to mark where this is at so I can see that I'm drilling and screwing into here and not out here. Now as I bring in this piece of plywood that we cut and I get it where I want it, I can see that I got between these 2 lines here to put my screws in, and I'll hit that center divider piece. Depending on your purposes, this could be it. You could be done at this point. If all you're going to do is like put a sink on it, like a vanity, or put a top on it, like a table or a desk or something. But for my purposes, this is not going to work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a skirt on here. I'm going to use 1x2s rather than 1x3s. And they're going to butt up together like that. So that means more pocket screws right there. And then there's going to be a lid that goes on top like this. So that skirt doesn't slide all the way down. It's going to stop here. And then there'll be a lid that goes on there to be hinged in the back to open up for access to the garbage cans. So I'm going to need to get the outside measurements here. The front ones are going to come out a little bit on each side to cover up the end grain of the piece that comes along here, just like this one's doing here. So we'll get this one for the short side first, which is 17 1/4. Cut it a little heavy. So now I've got 1x's clamped onto each end over here so I can measure the end to end and see what I need. So just like before, I'm going to cut them with this circular saw, drill the pocket holes, and screw them together, just like I did these. Alright, again, since they're 1x2s, I only put 1 pocket screw on each end. And it just barely fits. That's why I went a little heavy with the measurements, so it would just slip over there without being too hard. It rattles back and forth a little bit, but I'd rather have that than too tight. So I have a 1x4 here that I'm going to be using as the top part of the cover part. This is our 1x2 skirt right here. And this is going to mimic the 1x3 that's inside with the plywood that would be here. What I'm looking for is about a 1/2 inch overhang on the inside. That'll cover up the plywood and some of the lip of the garbage cans. So I'm going to put a mark right over here. Take away this. Let's see what we got here. I may just call this an even 2 from the inside. So that'll give us about a 1.5 inch overhang from where the skirt is at, which is pretty good. It's nice and easy to grab and pull off with your hands. Alright, so we know when we're measuring for those overhang pieces that we're going to have 1.5 inch on either side, which is a total of 3 inches. So if we measure this, we're about 27.25. So then we have 3 inches of that, which is 30.25. And then measuring in this direction here, it's right at 19. So that'll give us 22 inches. Alright, since we're cutting miters, we need these boards to be exactly the same length. So I'm lining them up here at one end. I'm going to take a clamp and clamp them to the 2x4 underneath. Then I'm going to make my miter here. Kind of come up to the corner a little bit. Make my line just so I know where it's supposed to go. I'm going to have to reset the blade on my saw. Then again, using the speed square to make my cut straight. Push this all the way up against the boards. Alright, so now we got to do the pocket holes on our miters here. I've got it clamped down here on this end so it won't fall off. A little bit of experimentation told me that the first hole should be this corner lined up with this corner, and then this edge lined up with this edge, nice and flush. Then if I just mark a line 2 inches from this corner here, then that mark will give me something to line up this corner with here. And again, I'll keep it flush. This pocket hole will not be seen from the front over here. That's mainly what I was worried about, is that this part here where it starts to drill in would be visible here, and it's not, so we're good. Got the apron on here. I'm going to be using the drill bit that has the drill bit on one side and the screwdriver on the other side. Looking at this, I can go all the way down to where this metal part meets the top of the wood here, and that'll countersink into there, so I can use one of these screws. I'm only going to drill 2 holes per side. Since it'll be long grain to long grain, I'm going to use some glue, and that'll do the bulk of the holding work. The screws will just clamp it down nice and tight. And now that part of the lid that we just finished slips right on top and it doesn't go down. Gives us a nice multi-level effect here. Looking good so far. Now I just need to work on a lid to cover up the garbage. So I've cut out and assembled the frame for the lid here. And I've also cut out the piece of plywood that's supposed to go in here. But I haven't installed it just yet. I need to know exactly where this is going to sit on here, because that piece of plywood is cut to go right inside here, so this lays flat on the lid here, or on the top. In order to do that, I need to put the hinges in. Here I've already got them attached. I routed out some pockets to put them in there. You can do that if you want, you don't have to. Using a tape measure, I was able to set up exactly where I want this lid to sit, and I drew little indicators on the back corners here, and the hinges are going to be back here. The hard part about doing hinges is how do I put these here and make sure everything lines up? Well, I'm going to use some, this is Gorilla tape. This is really good tape to use in a shop like this. But masking tape may work. Duct tape should probably work as well. This Gorilla tape just works very, very well in this kind of application here. So I'm going to put the tape with the sticky side facing that way. So that way when it's laying flat like that, the sticky side is up. Now using those registration marks that I drew in the back corners here, I can line the lid up on the top, right where I want it. Then I push down on that tape to get that tape to stick to the top. Now gently I can open the lid, and I can see right where my hinges are at. Push in there, I can see right where the holes are. On the drill here, I've got a center finding drill bit. The little spring-loaded part that extends where allows the bit to extend past. And it helps keep you centered on those holes. Now you just rip them off. I've got my hole locations marked. Alright, I took the tape off and I only put one screw into the top. That way I can take it out easily when I go to finish everything. But now I can put this down on top of the lid here, and I can take my glue and start gluing up for the plywood on the lid. So the glue is only on the lid. Now I can take my piece of plywood. This is my outside, so that's going to go down because the outside is on the top. And I'm just going to drop it down here inside the top. Push it down a bit. Get everything in there. And you can see how that goes. So now the construction is pretty much done. Now I just need to sand and finish. For sanding, I'm going to start with an 80 grit sandpaper. Despite all the effort we put into trying to get these pocket hole joints to flush up, sometimes they just don't. And you need the 80 grit sandpaper to bring things flush. From there, I'm going to move on to a 120. Both the 80 grit and the 120, I'll only be sanding the solid wood. I won't be touching the plywood at that point. You'll burn right through the veneer on the plywood if you do any of those higher grit sandpapers. And then I'm going to use some water and raise the grain. Some of the finishes that I'm personally going to be using are water-based, and they'll cause the grain to raise, so it's best to do that before you do the finishing. And then I can go with a 220 grit sandpaper and knock everything back, knock all that raised grain. Also with the 220 grit sandpaper, I will ease the edges, because otherwise if you use a 120 or even an 80, you're going to take off way too much. The 220 will ease the edges so it doesn't splinter, and it feels good in the hand when you got to move it around. At that point, you can start finishing. If you're going to paint, go ahead and paint. If you're going to do any type of stain on there, you can do that. I'm not going to get too much into the finishing aspect here since everyone's going to be doing something different. The only thing I want to say is that you want to have some kind of water or liquid proof coating on there, whether it's the latex type paint or an oil paint even, or if you're using a stain, you probably want to go over with some kind of polyurethane. In my case especially, it's going to be a garbage can cover. There's going to be garbage going in there. And if anything spills on here, I want to be able to clean up easy and not stain the wood. So I want to get a nice bunch of coats of some kind of waterproof or liquid proof finish on here. In my case, that's going to be polyurethane. You want to make sure you hit the insides as well. You want to be able to get all inside there because water and stuff is going to drip down in there, and you want to be able to clean it up easily and not have it soak into the wood. And that about wraps it up. So if you really like this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and subscribing down below. Feel free to leave any questions or comments. I'll answer anything that gets left there. If you have any friends who want to build something like this, feel free to share it with them. I encourage you to do so. It helps the channel. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.